Good morning, everybody. We are here for the Thursday installment of Praise You, and I'm just going to try and pin this. Hi, Jeanette. And we are going to be speaking with my very dear friend, Yayoi Shionoiri. There you go, Yayoi. Hi, I'm going to put you on in a minute. My name is Ing, and hi Maggie, my name Ing, and this is my morning chats during the time of COVID-19 that I initiated to connect with my friends from the creative industries. And we're now in week 2. We've had some great guests, and by the way, almost all of these chats have been archived on YouTube, so if you go to the bio in my Instagram and click on that, that will take you to a bunch of the talks. And I love seeing how some of you have already started pulling quotes from what people have said. Just the sharing of information has been really valuable to me and also to the people that I know are in the arts. So we're going to put Yayoi on a minute. And in the meantime, feel free to tell me where you're coming from. We're going to have such a good talk because she is just the smartest person I know, honestly. So let's see, Yayoi, where are you? Yayoi, can you request me again? I don't know what happened to that thing. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Nope. Yayoi. Hi, Ben. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. Sorry, everyone. Yayoi really is the smartest. I know. And that's her partner, who's also very smart. Hi, Via Art Fund. Hi from Boston, by the way. It's nice to see everyone from so many different places. And hey, Lainey Contemporary. There you go, Yayoi. Thank you. Okay, let's do this. Add. Yayoi. Is it happening? It's happening. Hey, girl.
Hello. Good morning. Good
You look fabulous.
Thank you.
I love this look.
Thank you. It's a vintage piece from Kat Vargas, who's a person who lives near us, and she has a very lovely shop in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
That's so cool. Yeah. Everyone say hi to Yayoi. Give her a wave. Hi. Give her some hearts.
Hello.
So good to see you. I'm having my coffee this morning. I hope you're caffeinated.
I'm also caffeinating with
nice
the Yayoi Kusama mug. And hi, everybody who's writing in and saying hi, hello. Good morning to those of you. I see many of you in America, but I see some of you from Japan as well, Taro-san. Mm-hmm. I also see someone from Lagos, Nigeria. Jumoke, how are you?
Amazing.
So it's great to see.
Isn't Yayoi just the best? Actually, I want to co-host a show with you. The two lies.
Hello, how are you doing, Ing? How's your morning going?
I'm fine this morning. I'm actually, this is my first coffee in days. I've been just having tea for the last few days, and I feel super invigorated. I think the last few days I needed to kind of have some calm.
Sure.
Which was fun too, and today I'm feeling really good. And I'm really excited to talk to you. So Yayoi, we've known each other for a few years. We met through the wonderful Sarah Raza, and you were her colleague at the Guggenheim.
That is right.
You were on the legal team, and then you went on to Artsy, as general counsel. And then after Artsy, you took a position as executive director of the Chris Burden Estate and Nancy Rubin's studio.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But first, I want to just ask how you're doing on a personal level during this time of the pandemic.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. And also thanks so much for having me, Ing, because Ing, you are a rock for our community. You have already brought so many amazing friends to Instagram Live. Every single day, you're out there talking to us us, checking in on us, giving us space and giving us the opportunity and holding space for our community. So that's really inspirational. And I think for me, I'm just so honored to share in the Praise You chat because of all the other amazing friends that you have who are also giving these talks.
Oh, thank you so much, Yayoi.
Thank you. And day to day, how is it? Day to day, my job, I work for, as you said, the Chris Burden Estate and the Nancy Rubin Studio. They are based in Topanga, California. So I was already starting remote work, 100%.
You're in New York City.
Yes, that's right. Just to clarify, I am based in New York. And so I had already had a very remote job, even BC. One of my friends calls this the before COVID period, the BC period. I was already remote.
That's right.
And in the BC time, right? As an art world person, I had this first world high class problem of having to travel a lot and going to meetings and being out and about and representing the Chris Burden Estate and the Nancy Rubin Studio sort of in all sorts of capacities. And so I had this very high class problem of, I have to travel all over the place. I was never home. But now I'm really more in seat, right? And having the opportunity to sort of have the mind space to really sort of think through what is the best interests of the Chris Burden Estate and the Nancy Rubin's Studio.
Yeah.
Shall I talk a little bit about those two artists just a little bit?
I would love to hear, yes, please. I'd love to hear how the pandemic has affected exhibition schedules, perhaps, and even, have you applied for the PPP, things like that. Please let us know.
Yeah. So for those of you who, many of you probably already know, but just as a high-level reminder, Nancy Rubins is a contemporary American artist. She lives and works in Topanga, California, and she makes monumental sculptures out of large, often discarded objects like airplane parts, hot water heaters, canoes, boats, cast metal animal parts. And her practice is really organic. Like she brings together these composite parts into these big blooming arrangements that for me both simultaneously feel very static as well as dynamic as well. And so a little bit on Nancy. Nancy had a number of shows, both commercial and non-commercial shows planned this year. And so for me and for Nancy and for the team, we've really had to say now that the world has come to a grinding halt, what does that mean for Nancy's practice? First of all, how do we even make sure that our team remains safe and healthy while also ensuring that we comply with the California stay-at-home order, but also thinking about, are there things that the crew can do while everybody is stay at place and continuing to keep working? So there's that part, the rescheduling of the studio part. And then on the flip side is the how do we ensure that when things pick up again, and if they do, and I most certainly hope they do, how can we ensure that Nancy's work can be seen? So things like, negotiating, discussing, talking with the venue organizers for the shows that we have been talking about, of course, ensuring that they also stay safe and healthy too, and making sure they're all okay, which in and of itself is kind of a big deal right now. But really trying to figure out what we can do for Nancy once things pick up.
Yeah. Because for you as executive director, you're dealing with HR issues, just the health and safety of your staff, but also the ability to continue her practice as an artist and the physical ways that can happen and the logistical thing. That's a lot to have to deal with, especially from across the country where you are now. You can't fly over there anytime soon.
That's right.
Well, I'm sure eventually things will start normalizing, whatever that means. But in the meantime, are you finding it okay working from home?
Yeah.
You've been doing this basically since early March,
February. Yeah. In New York, we've actually been quarantining for a little bit earlier maybe than most families because my mom and dad live with me. And so it is sort of hunkering down. But you did mention PPP. So what is that? For those of us as a high-level reminder, PPP is the Paycheck Protection Program that is part and parcel of the federal stimulus package that is available for the American people. And it really, what it is it helps to try to ensure that people, small businesses, can keep their people paid, keep their people on payroll. And so, and then this kind of probably ties into our larger conversation too, but really personally for me, like part of my last 2 weeks has been scrambling to see whether or not the two studios, so the Chris Burden estate and the Nancy Rubin studio, can they qualify? Can they apply for the PPP? And the answer is yes. And I have really spent together with some of my team members the last 2 weeks scrambling to find out information about the program, figure out how best to apply, when to apply, how do I put my best foot forward to ensure that we can try to get this funding. So it's been, I will say, sort of a mad scramble the last 2 weeks, and it now feels like in some ways I'm adding fundraising to my job as well.
That is crazy, just hearing about how much you had to scramble, because what I'm hearing is that you are dealing with two entities, right? The estate and the studio are actually two separate legal entities, so you have to apply twice.
Yes.
And the other reason for me feeling like this is just crazy that you're saying it was a scramble is because you are incredibly well educated. You are a lawyer. You are someone for whom, these government procedures might be a little bit more intuitive to the American people than the rest of us. And yet, even for you, it sounds like it was very difficult.
It was very difficult. The program was thankfully approved relatively quickly from the government, which is great. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like the first amount of money, like $349 billion, seems like a lot. But it went very, very quickly. And I think my personal, very lived experience about this is understanding fully that everyone is hurting, everyone needs cash, and that is totally acceptable. So in some ways, it's this very supposedly democratic policy that if you need the money, you are supposed to get it. And I think, you're already shaking your head and you're kind of internally rolling your eyes, right? And I think that's kind of where our conversation is going. I think sort of one of the very big problems that I personally experienced was that the access to information is not democratic. The access to ensuring that you can put your best foot forward and your best face forward is not at all democratic. And so that's why I think at the end of the day, it was a mad scramble. And many people still have not been able to apply through their banks. Many people have applied, but they're not sure where their application is in the system. It might be caught, it might be lost, who knows? And so I think,
or they don't know if they did it right. I mean, my father, who has his own dental practice, was applying, and it took him days. He really felt like he had to study it, despite having been in the U.S. for almost 40 years. It's not his first language, and some of these questions were weird to him, and I guess I assumed that there would be like a Chinese language version, a Spanish language version, that. And maybe this is just part of having lived in New York for so long. You assume some of these accessibility points will be available, but I could not find those versions. Maybe they were available, but I couldn't find them.
I think also part of that, it's sort of the implementation of a policy that happened very quickly. And I think at the end of the day, it was meant to try to support people. And yet the way it was rolled out was fast, hasty. Legislation had to happen very quickly. Everybody in the government who's trying to help us on the implementation side, and the government is also working from home too. Like, I was reminded by somebody who works very closely with the government that this is really the first time that government employees are being asked to work from home, accessing their systems from home as well. And so it was definitely very hastily put together. And of course, I think it was meant with good intentions, but the rollout, I think, at the end of the day, shows a wide disparity in things like class, in terms of accessibility, in terms of understanding, in terms of language as well.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I hope that the estate and the studio come out successful with the application. So we're midway through. That went by so fast, Yayoi. This is Yayoi Shionoiri, who is the ED, Executive Director of the Chris Burden Estate and the Nancy Rubin Studio. We are connecting with her while she is in her home in New York City. And one of the things Yayoi and I talk very passionately about all the time, I mean, I love talking with you because we always, sometimes it's a little bit of like bitching about what's going on in the art world. And what I love is, her partner is like a legal scholar. He does human rights issues. He's very involved with what's happening with the pandemic right now. Hey, Ben, you're the best. And sometimes I look at him, I'm like, are you bothered by the fact that we're talking about the art world? You're out there saving lives and we're here talking about, the art market and all the craziness. But we do love the art world. We have invested our careers in it. And we want to see it thrive. So for you, someone who's practiced legal practice and your community is incredibly international, how would you like to see the art ecosystem thrive in a post-COVID environment?
Yeah, and this is really for me like a very critical question, and I wish I had the answers for this, right? This global pandemic has really shown how fragile the American system is and parts of the American system, right? And that's for example, small businesses related to the art world that have short runways, nonprofits that have to furlough or lay people off because public spaces aren't open right now. And how does this affect the art world? Well, sometimes we think about artists, we put them on a pedestal in a good way, and we say, hey, like, artists are oracles, they're truth sayers. They somehow sit outside of society so that they have the ability to think things through, filter, process. Their creative process is sometimes outside of society, and that's why that makes their vision so singular. We see some artists joining right now too, people like James Clark, Christopher Ho, John Bergerman, all of you who are out there today listening, thanks so much. We love you all. And people like people like me, people like Sarah Raza, who's also joined as well, right? We all are in the art world because we love what you artists do. We love how you see the world and how you put yourselves out there. However, that all having been said, the global pandemic is really proving that artists aren't outside of this system. Right. Artists are being heavily affected. Right. And I have sort of seen it with the studios that I work for. Right now, artists are having to fight for their economic survival before they even have the mind space or bandwidth to create. Right. And that's also people like Jeanette's out there as well. Jeanette's watching too. Here are all these artists who are not outside the system and who are having to fight for example, the PPP like every other small business owner.
Right.
And so what does that mean? And Owen Duffy, who I think is also out there right now as well. Owen, who's the amazing director of Yay Art Gallery at St. John's University, and I were chatting about this a little bit on email. And we were both confirming that at the end of the day, there needs to probably be a stronger safety network for not just artists, but for everybody in society. Right? What does this mean? Like, it means that people need to have access to universal health care or cheaper health care. People need to have access to education where people like public schools and private schools. There's a big disparity in the types of education that people are getting. Maybe there's a way to make that more democratic. I think right now for me, while I've been thinking really hard about how to resuscitate the art world, it's really also about something much bigger as well.
It is, right. And, curators I've spoken to about this in terms of asking them similar questions, have all said, they've said, you really can't address the issue of artists post-COVID without talking about things like universal health care. And I think there are plenty of you watching right now who do not live in the United States. And if you are in a country with universal health care or something more along the lines of that, please let us know how that affects you as an artist. Because I know in the United States, most young artists do not even pay for healthcare. That is one thing that they just sacrifice, assuming that they're healthy and, basically saying that money can be put towards my rent or my art supplies or the studio that I also have to pay for. So there is a huge level of disparity, but there also is, the question of access, and the term accessibility is very different in a lot of ways. I think for the art world, especially in the museum environment, it's about those with physical handicaps being able to come into the space and have comfort enjoying the same exhibitions as everybody else. But there's also digital accessibility. There's so many platforms that we are not seeing as we're just not leveling the playing field. I don't think, as a country. And it's a very big country, and we are not we're not a homogenous country. We can't assume. I mean, you're Japanese, American, Canadian, you're all sorts of things. I'm Taiwanese American. We have roots in these countries that are that perhaps it's easier to get rally the community to kind of follow a lead, assuming that the people want that lead. And I think that's why we've seen perhaps more success in some of these countries in treating the pandemic and preventing the pandemic from getting worse. But I think in this country, we were talking about this earlier, the right to freedom, the right to do whatever you want in this country. I mean, that is powerful and it is important, but it also means that it's very hard for consensus, and that consensus makes it very hard for those who might not have a voice, right, to be heard. And I think that, one thing that the art world has done well throughout, I think, the 20th century is provide a voice for those who the media and the governments might not have wanted to have heard. And in my work, I was involved with a panel that discussed the AIDS HIV pandemic to COVID-19, and there were 3 artists. One of them talked about, in the 80s, why she started her art activism was because the New York Times was not covering the epidemic. The government was not talking about the epidemic. It was really seen as a moral issue. You were a bad person if you had AIDS, So it was the artists who really started bringing out the stories and the voices. And but they did it at their own risk. They did not do it for monetary gain. They did not do it for fame. Right. It was that they were the voice of the consciousness.
Right. And I think to respond to that, right, like in the long interim when the government cannot yet help people, or we're moving towards, that kind of, we can't yet move towards that kind of a society now and immediately. I have again seen, I think just to respond to that, again, the sort of amazing community raising that has happened in the artist community, right? And you've seen it too, Ing, probably. It's like artists helping other artists, including things like artist-run foundation grants, foundations that were based on sort of the assets of artists that have already passed, that left amazing legacies and who have support, who are able to support. That's people like the Mike Kelly Foundation, for example, right? It's an artist helping artists, passing it forward model. We're already seeing that a lot of these foundations are starting COVID-19 grants. Artist Relief Fund is also another one that's bringing together members of the philanthropic community to really support artists, right? There are other things like resources that are coming together. Digital engagement is happening, right? And that's things like Mana Contemporary. And I see Erin out there, I think, but Mana Contemporary has an amazing page that has resources of all available artist and art worker related grants right now. Q Art Foundation is also doing something similar. And then on like the art worker side of things, there's similarly seeds that are starting to be planted. Like, for example, the LA Art Workers Relief Fund, which will be sort of a crowdsourced funding model to give out grants for art workers, not artists, but art workers. Similar, I think the other one is Art Leaders of Color Emergency Fund is another one. So POCs helping art workers and art leaders. And then there are other things like Black Art Futures Fund, which usually is a fund that supports small community organized Black organizations, but now is doing emergency funding as well. So again, those are some, there's many more. There's a lot that's coming out, which also is just gives me a lot of hope that we are all trying to support each other.
It is very hopeful. And I love that you brought those up, and there are so many more. I think the hard part for me is going through all of those. And because they're all so different and there's so many of them, it's kind of overwhelming, to be honest, for me. But we have 4 minutes. So if anyone has questions for Yayoi, please put them in the comments. If you don't, she and I will have plenty to talk about, so don't worry about it.
Hello, Jolene. I'm seeing lots of people from all over. It's wonderful.
So many people love Yayoi.
From Japan, Jolene from the Netherlands.
Amazing. Thank you for watching. So Yayoi, you have this incredible background in legal in the legal world and predominantly in the arts. Is there anything that you think the art lawyers out there are specifically helpful in navigating right now?
That's a really good question, and I think sort of it kind of, I think, I don't really want to talk for art lawyers in general, because I think we're all different and we're all trying to figure out how best we can support our clients and the world that we love so much. But I do think lawyers in general, if they are empathetic, they have the ability to think through crises. That is part and parcel of their job, right? When things go really south, what are you supposed to do? Or what could you do? Or what could you do to try to avoid that horrible situation? Lawyers are pretty used to doing that because that's part of their jobs. And so I think maybe, at least for me, how I've been thinking about that is, how do I help my artist friends and also people around me? How do I help them think about, like, what are their contracts that they have right now? What sorts of obligations, what sorts of things are they expected to be able to do, or they are expected to do and they are bound to do? Can they still do them? If they can no longer do them because of COVID, then how can we figure out what that revised arrangement looks like? I think it's sort of like art lawyers and lawyers in general might be pretty good at that rejiggering moment.
I think you're right.
There are some artists.
Something you guys are good for.
One thing we might be good for. And I see some other Japanese artists as well. Otsuka-san from Japan has kindly joined also. A lot of Japanese artists were working towards having the possibility of showing their work or collaborating for or working on or doing something related to the Tokyo Olympics, which was supposed to happen this year, which obviously it's not happening anymore. And many of these artists have been given some opportunity opportunity, whether directly tied for grants from the government or otherwise, just to really have an opportunity to show their work. And I think right now in Japan, we're sort of figuring out with our artists, what does it mean now that they might not necessarily be able to do that either forever or for, it's delayed for a while.
Right. That's fascinating. Yeah, the Tokyo Olympics, that was kind of one of the first casualties of all of this. And I felt that it took a long time for it to be canceled. And I get it's just such a behemoth, to take it all apart.
Who knows what was happening behind the scenes to finally come up with that official and appropriate decision that it needs to be postponed.
Yeah. In our last minute, tell me, what do you do to create peace of mind or a sense of calm in your environment? Because you're in the middle of New York City, you're with your partner, but also your parents who are older, and you're taking care of a whole household. So what do you do for yourself?
Well, that's very sweet of you to ask.
Besides talking to me.
Besides talking to you, which is, of course, the most exciting thing, and I would get up early to do that, of course. I'm trying to keep up with my yoga practice. Yoga was, I think, in some ways like a ritual where I went to the studio. Like it was like a forced break from my day where I built it into my day, and it was this moving into a different space, enjoying that time, working and feeling through my body. I mean, by the way, I'm not good at yoga at all. Like I'm really horrible at it, but I was doing it. And so that was something where I had forced it. I had forced a habit into my schedule. And now I'm really trying to do yoga at home, which can get very difficult because it's like, it's much easier for yoga at home to be displaced because you don't have to show up.
Exactly.
Another thing that we tried yesterday, one of my lovely colleagues and art world friends, Erika Mercado, and her Instagram, I think, is ERMELA presents, Ermela presents, Erika Mercado LA presents. She has a meditation practice. And so we decided to meditate and online, which was kind of this, for me, very strange, but really lovely moment as well.
No, it's great. I actually at one point invited a meditation teacher to come to our home because I knew that without him, I would just get lazy.
Yeah.
And I have.
Sure, yes. And you can't invite him into your home anymore, So
I know. Well, yeah, I mean, that was in New York. Karen Karp had a question on what are your thoughts on how museums can stage reopenings?
Oh, that's such a good question. And that can, I think, unto itself be like a whole panel of experts, because I think we all have our own ideas about this. I am not the true public health expert in the family, but at the end of the day, what's going to have to happen, I think, is social distancing is going to be more, unfortunately, the rule, not the exception.
Interesting.
Right? So, and what does that mean? I mean, it's of course, if there is a vaccine that works and everyone gets the vaccine, maybe there will be more of a sense of normalcy. But up until then, I think in some ways, for certain cities where they think they have a control on the virus, if these public places start opening up, it might mean, for example, that there is a cap on the number of people who are able to visit each room at a time, for example, which then has more issues, of course, because then the museum will have to operate essentially at full capacity, right? Keeping the lights on, having the guards back, having our educators back, but still not getting that admissions revenue because it's just not going to be a lot of big groups, right? School groups, I don't know, would you want your two little people to go on a big school group to museum, even if the museum opened, right? It's you're I don't know.
I don't know if it means school is back in session, maybe.
Okay.
No, but in all seriousness, it's a very big question. And I saw that, Phil Tenari, as you know, was on a few days ago or last week, and UCCA is reopening as of, I think, yesterday. But it's really a quiet opening. They're opening, but there are no physical bodies.
Right.
They're just taking things, photos, VR things, I believe, for the web and for the public to experience online. So we are way past time. I told you we could talk about this forever, but thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you are the best, Ing. Please stay safe and healthy. For those of you who kindly listened in, thanks so much for sharing your evenings and mornings with us. Please stay safe and look forward to seeing everybody online.
Same. All right. And this will be archived on the stories for 24 hours and then up on YouTube afterwards.
Great.
Thank you, Yayoi. Bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.